The hours crawled by in the darkness beneath the old saloon. Myray sat with her back against the cold stone wall, her wedding dress torn and dirty. The white fabric looked gray in the dim light filtering through the floorboards above. She could hear Vrelian soldiers moving through Dusthaven, their footsteps heavy and purposeful. Jihoon crouched near the stairs, watching and listening. He had removed his long coat and now wore only his environment suit. The suit was modified with armor plates and weapon holsters. Myray realized that the cowboy persona was just a cover. This man was a soldier. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "About Daho's plan." Jihoon glanced back at her. 3 days. I intercepted some of his communications by accident while doing a security sweep. At first I thought he was just doing illegal business with the Vrelians, selling them mining data or something. But then I saw your name in the transmissions. You could have warned me. "I tried," Jihoon said. "Remember when I asked to speak with you privately 2 days ago? Your fiancé made sure we were never alone. He kept you surrounded by his people at all times." Myray remembered. Daho had been unusually protective the past few days. She had thought he was just being romantic, wanting to preserve the tradition of not seeing the bride before the wedding. Now she understood he was keeping her isolated. A scream echoed from somewhere in the town. Myray flinched. Jihoon's expression hardened, but he did not move from his position. "We should help them," Myray said. "We cannot help anyone if we are dead," Jihoon replied. "Right now, we need to stay hidden and stay alive. That is how we win. How is hiding winning?" Jihoon turned to face her fully. "You really want to know? Fine. The Vrelians are bullies. They have better weapons and more soldiers than we do. But they have a weakness. They think in straight lines. They believe everyone will act logically when faced with superior force. They expect you to surrender to save lives. Should I not?" "No," Jihoon said firmly. "Because they will kill those people anyway. The Vrelians do not value life the way we do. To them, other species are either useful or worthless. Right now, you are useful because of what you found. Once they have that information, everyone in this town becomes worthless." Myray felt sick. She had studied Vrelian culture in her xenobiology classes, but reading about their brutality was different from experiencing it. "Tell me about what you found," Jihoon said. "In the canyons. What is so important that they would risk war with? The human colonies?" Myray pulled a small data chip from a hidden pocket in her dress. She had sewn the pocket herself, a habit from her research work. Scientists learned to keep backups of everything. "I found artifacts," she said. "Fragments of technology buried in the canyon walls. They are old, millions of years old, but they still work. What do? I do not know yet, but they respond to human touch, specifically human. I tested them with samples from other species we have encountered. Nothing happened. But when I touched them, they activated. Symbols appeared. Energy patterns formed. It was like they were waiting for us." Jihoon was quiet for a moment. "You are saying these artifacts were made for humans? But they are millions of years old. Humans have only been in space for a few hundred years." "I know," Myray said. "It does not make sense. Unless the beings who made these artifacts encountered humanity long ago, on Earth, before we had space travel. The precursors," Jihoon said softly. "We have heard legends about them. An ancient race that left technology scattered across the galaxy. Most people think it is just stories." "It is not stories," Myray said. "I have proof. And if the Vrelians know about it, they will do anything to suppress this information. Their entire empire is built on the claim that they are the oldest and most advanced species. If humans have a connection to the precursors, it destroys their legitimacy." Above them, Myray heard more Vrelians enter the saloon. They were searching again, more thoroughly this time. She heard them tearing apart the building, ripping out panels and breaking through walls. Ji-hoon put his finger to his lips, warning her to stay silent. He drew a pistol from his holster. The weapon was human-made but modified with alien components. Myray recognized Vrelian plasma coils integrated into the design. The footsteps came closer. A Vrelian soldier was directly above them now. Myray could see its shadow through the floorboards. It stood still, scanning the area with some kind of detection equipment. Murray's breath caught in her throat. The cellar had shielding against basic scans, but if the Vrelian used a deep-level sensor, it would find them. The soldier's clicking voice spoke into a communicator. Myray did not understand the words, but the tone was questioning. It had detected something. Jihan raised his pistol, pointing it at the ceiling. His finger rested on the trigger, ready to fire through the floorboards if necessary. Then another voice responded to the soldier. This one sounded annoyed, dismissive. The soldier above them clicked in acknowledgement and moved away. Myray let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Ji-hoon lowered his weapon but did not holster it. That was close, he said. Too close, Myray agreed. We can't stay here much longer. Eventually they will find us. I know, Ji-hoon said, which is why we need to change tactics. Hiding is only the first step. What is the second step? Ji-hoon smiled, and Myray saw something dangerous in that expression. We make them afraid of us. He pulled out a small tablet and showed her a map of Dust Haven. The town was laid out in a grid pattern, typical of human frontier colonies. But beneath the streets were maintenance tunnels, water pipes, and old mining shafts from the early days of colonization. These tunnels connect to most of the buildings in town, Ji-hoon explained. The Vrelians will not know about them. Their scans will show them as natural cave formations. We can use them to move around unseen. Move around to do what? Sabotage, Ji-hoon said. Hit their supplies. Destroy their communication relays. Make them waste resources hunting for us. Every hour we keep them busy here is another hour for a distress signal to reach the colonial fleet. You sent a distress signal? Before the attack started. When I first detected their ships approaching. But the nearest human military base is 3 days away at best. We need to survive until they arrive. 3 days. Myray looked down at her torn wedding dress, at the dust and stains covering it. 3 days ago, she had been planning a marriage. Now she was planning guerrilla warfare against an alien invasion. I am a scientist, she said, not a soldier. You are human, Ji-hoon replied. That is enough. I can teach you the rest. He reached into his coat and pulled out a smaller pistol. He offered it to Myray handle first. Do you know how to use one of these? I had basic training at the academy, Myray said, taking the weapon. It felt heavy and cold in her hand. But I have never shot anyone. Hopefully you will not have to, Ji-hoon said. But if it comes down to them or you, do not hesitate. The Vrelians will not. Myray checked the pistol's power cell and safety like she had been taught years ago. The muscle memory was still there, even if her hand shook slightly. Why are you helping me? She asked. You could have run when the attack started. You could have saved yourself. Ji-hoon was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. 6 months ago, when you first arrived in Dust Haven, you came into the saloon looking for information about the local wildlife. Do you remember? Myray nodded. It had been her first week on New Mesa. You were so excited about everything, Ji-hoon continued. So curious and enthusiastic. You asked me 100 questions about the desert, about the strange plants, about everything. Most people who come here are just looking to get rich. But you genuinely cared about this place, about understanding it. He looked at her directly. People like you are rare, worth protecting. And besides, I am human too. We look after our own. Before Myray could respond, they heard a new sound from outside. A Vrelian transport was landing in the town square. Through the floorboards, Myray heard the main doors of the saloon burst open. A voice spoke in heavily accented English. "Attention, humans. You have 1 hour to surrender the female scientist Myray Choi. If she is not delivered, we will begin executing hostages. 1 every 10 minutes. Choose wisely." Myray closed her eyes. They had hostages. Innocent people who would die because of her. But Ji-hoon put his hand on her shoulder. "Do not," he said. "Do not even think about surrendering. That is what they want. They want you to feel guilty so you will give up. But your surrender will not save those people. It will just make their deaths meaningless." "How can you be sure?" "Because I have fought Vrelians before," Ji-hoon said, "and I know how they think. Our only chance is to fight back. To show them that humans do not break, even when we should." Myray opened her eyes and looked at the pistol in her hand. Then she looked at Ji-hoon, this strange cowboy soldier who was risking his life for her. "All right," she said. "Tell me what to do." The desert wind carried red dust through the streets of Dust Haven as Myray stood in her white wedding dress. The fabric was expensive, imported from Earth, and it felt strange against her skin after 6 months of wearing practical field clothes. She looked at herself in the cracked mirror of the old saloon's back room and wondered if she was making a mistake. Outside, the celebration had already begun. Colonists filled the main hall, drinking and laughing. The saloon had been decorated with white ribbons and earth flowers grown in expensive hydroponic gardens. Daeho had spared no expense for this wedding. He wanted everyone in Dust Haven to see his wealth and power. Myray touched the necklace around her throat. It was the only jewelry she wore. A simple silver chain her grandmother had given her before she left Earth. Everything else about today belonged to Daeho and his vision of what their life should be. Through the window, she could see the hover vehicles parked outside. Daeho's friends and business partners had come from across New Mesa. Mining barons, corporate executives, and colonial officials all gathered to witness the marriage. But Myray noticed a few of her own friends were present. The other scientists she worked with had sent polite excuses. They did not trust Daeho, and they had told her so many times. A knock on the door made her turn. 5 minutes, Miss Choi," called Yoonji, the town doctor who was helping her prepare. "Are you ready?" Myray opened her mouth to answer, but the words stuck in her throat. Was she ready? She had agreed to this marriage for practical reasons. Daeho offered security, resources for her research, and a permanent place in the colony. But standing here in this dress, she felt like she was about to make a terrible mistake. Before she could respond, the lights flickered. Then they went out completely. Myray heard shouting from the main hall. Not the happy noise of celebration, but screams of fear. She rushed to the door and opened it just as the first explosion shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling, and somewhere a glass shattered dot in the main hall. Chaos had erupted. The wedding guests were running in all directions. Through the windows, Myray saw ships descending from the sky. They were not human ships. The hulls were dark and covered in sharp angles that hurt to look at. She recognized them from her xenobiology studies. Vrelian warships. A strong hand grabbed her arm and pulled her backward. Myray turned to see Ji-hoon Park, the bounty hunter Daeho had hired to provide security. He wore his usual long coat over an environment suit, and his face was grim. "We need to move," Ji-hoon said. His voice was calm despite the chaos. "Right now, what's happening?" Myray asked, but she already knew. The Vrelians were attacking. The question was why. "No time," Ji-hoon said. He pulled her toward the back of the saloon, away from the main hall where people were still screaming. "Your fiancé sold you out. The Vrelians are here for you specifically." Myray's mind raced. Daeho had betrayed her? But why would the Vrelians want her? She was just a scientist studying local ecosystem patterns. Unless they knew about what she had found in the Crimson Canyons. 2 weeks ago, during a routine survey, Mireille had discovered something in the canyon walls. Fragments of technology that did not match any known civilization. The artifacts had strange properties. They responded to her touch, lighting up with symbols she could not read. She had kept the discovery quiet, planning to study them more before making an official report. Had someone leaked the information? Another explosion rocked the building. Ji-hoon kicked open a hidden door in the back wall and pulled Mireille through. They descended a narrow staircase into darkness. The cellar beneath the old saloon smelled of dust and old wood above them. Mireille heard heavy footsteps. The Vrelians were inside the building now. She heard their clicking language and the hum of their weapons. Someone was begging for their life in Korean. Then a plasma discharge cut off the pleading voice. Ji-hoon pressed his hand over Mireille's mouth as she gasped. His other hand pointed up, warning her to stay silent. Through the gaps in the floorboards above, Mireille could see movement. Alien soldiers were searching the saloon room by room. The Vrelians were insectoid creatures, tall and covered in dark chitin armor. They moved with disturbing speed and precision. Their heads turned in quick jerks as they scanned for threats. Each one carried weapons that glowed with blue energy. Mara's heart pounded so loud she was certain they would hear it. Her white wedding dress seemed to glow in the darkness of the cellar, a beacon that would give them away. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to make herself smaller. One of the Vrelians stopped directly above them. It stood still for a long moment, its head tilting as if listening. Mireille held her breath. Ji-hoon's hand remained over her mouth, gentle but firm. She could feel his own heartbeat, steady and calm. How was he so calm? Finally, the Vrelian moved on. It joined the others as they swept through the building. Mireille heard them smashing furniture and equipment, destroying everything in their search. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, the sounds above faded. The Vrelians had moved to the next building. But Mireille could still hear them outside, shouting orders in their harsh language. Ji-hoon slowly removed his hand from Mireille's mouth. She took a shaky breath. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do they want me?" Ji-hoon pulled a small device from his coat and showed her a screen. It displayed intercepted communications. Mireille could not read the Vrelian script, but she recognized the images. Her research data, maps of the Crimson Canyons, and photographs of the artifacts she had found. "You found something they want," Ji-hoon said quietly. "Something important enough to start a war over." "Daho knew," Mireille said, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "He knew what I found. He was going to hand me over to them." "Looks that way," Ji-hoon agreed. "The question is, what do we do now?" Mireille looked up at the floorboards above them. She could hear Vrelian soldiers outside, setting up positions around the town. They were not leaving until they found her. "I should surrender," she said. "If I turn myself in, maybe they will leave everyone else alone." Ji-hoon shook his head. "They are executing anyone who resists. They have already killed a dozen people. If you surrender, they will take what they want from you and then kill everyone in this town anyway." "That is what they do. Then what?" Mireille asked. "We cannot hide here forever." Ji-hoon smiled, and for the first time since the attack began, Mireille saw something other than fear in someone's eyes. She saw determination. "We do not hide," he said. "We fight back. That is what humans do best." Outside, a Vrelian commander announced in broken English that the town was under occupation. Any human who resisted would be executed. Any human who helped the female scientist would watch their family die before joining them. In the darkness of the cellar, wearing a ruined wedding dress and hiding from alien invaders, Mireille made her choice. She would not surrender. She would not let these creatures take what she had discovered, and she would make Daeho regret the day he thought he could trade her life for profit. She looked at Ji-hoon. "Tell me your plan." The maintenance tunnel was narrow and dark. Mireille crawled behind Ji-hoon, her hands scraping against rough metal. She had torn away the bottom half of her wedding dress, making it easier to move. The white fabric was now just a dirty shirt and improvised shorts. Her grandmother would have been horrified. They emerged in the basement of the old general store, 3 buildings away from the saloon. Ji-hoon moved silently, checking each corner before advancing. Mireille tried to copy his movements, but she felt clumsy and loud dot above them. They could hear Vrelian soldiers conducting searches. The clicking of their language echoed through the building. Ji-hoon held up his hand, signaling Mireille to wait. He listened carefully, then pointed to a storage room on their left. Inside the storage room, they found exactly what Ji-hoon had been hoping for: chemical supplies. The general store stocked everything a frontier colony needed, including industrial solvents, fertilizers, and other materials that could be repurposed. "Can you make explosives from this?" Ji-hoon asked quietly. Mireille examined the labels on the containers. Her xenobiology training had included extensive chemistry. She had needed it to analyze alien compounds and biological samples. "Yes," she said. "Basic explosives. Nothing fancy, but enough to damage equipment or create distractions." "Good," Ji-hoon said. "We start small. Hit their supply depot first. Make them nervous." They worked quickly, mixing chemicals in empty containers. Mireille used her knowledge of molecular structures to create unstable compounds that would detonate with heat or impact. Ji-hoon fashioned simple triggers from electronic components he salvaged from broken equipment in the store. "You did this before," Mireille observed, watching him work. "Making bombs in enemy territory." "Different enemy," Ji-hoon said. "Same principle. Humans have always been good at improvising weapons from whatever we have available. It is one of our survival traits. The Vrelians have advanced technology. Energy weapons, armor. Why do you think primitive explosives will work?" Ji-hoon smiled grimly. "Because they are not expecting it. The Vrelians think technology makes them superior. They rely on their sensors and their shields. But a chunk of metal propelled by a chemical explosion does not care about energy shields. It just goes through." He was right. Mireille remembered from her studies that Vrelian shielding was designed to deflect energy weapons and plasma. Kinetic impacts were less effective against their armor, but a large enough explosion would overwhelm any defense. They finished assembling 6 crude bombs. Not much, but enough to start their campaign of resistance. "The supply depot is 2 blocks away," Ji-hoon said, checking his tablet. "But we cannot just walk up to it. There will be guards. What if we create a distraction?" Mireille suggested. "Something to draw them away from their supplies. Like what?" Mireille thought for a moment. Then she pulled out the data chip she had been carrying. The one with her research on the precursor artifacts. "What if they think they found me?" she said. "We plant this chip somewhere obvious. They find it, think I dropped it while escaping. They focus their search in that direction while we hit the depot." Ji-hoon considered this. Risky. If they analyze the chip too quickly, they get what they came for. "The chip is encrypted," Mireille said. "It will take their computers hours to break through my security protocols. Maybe days. You are sure?" "I designed the encryption myself. I am good at what I do." Ji-hoon grinned. "I am starting to see that. All right, let us do it." They used the tunnels to move closer to the Vrelian command post. Ji-hoon left the data chip on the street, positioned where a patrol would find it. Then they retreated and waited. It did not take long. A Vrelian patrol spotted the chip within minutes. Mireille watched through a crack in a wall as the soldiers examined it, then called for their commander. A larger Vrelian arrived, this one with more elaborate armor markings. The commander picked up the chip and clicked orders to the soldiers. Immediately, half the troops in the area began moving toward the eastern part of town, away from the supply depot. Now, Ji-hoon whispered. They moved quickly through the tunnels toward the depot. Marie's heart pounded. She was terrified, but also felt something else. Excitement. Agency. For the first time since the attack began, she was not just hiding. She was fighting back. The supply depot was a temporary structure the Vrelians had set up in the town square. It held ammunition, power cells, and equipment for their occupation force. 2 guards stood outside, their weapons ready. Ji-hoon studied the guards from their hidden position. I can take them out silently, but we need to move fast once I do. Can you handle that? Yes, Myre said, surprised by the confidence in her own voice. Ji-hoon moved like a shadow. He crossed the distance to the first guard in seconds. His knife flashed, and the Vrelian went down without a sound. The second guard turned, but Ji-hoon was already there. Another swift strike and both guards were dead. Myre ran to the depot entrance while Ji-hoon dragged the bodies out of sight. Her hands shook as she placed their homemade bombs among the supplies. She set the timers for 5 minutes. Enough time to get clear. Done, she whispered. They ran back to the tunnel entrance. Behind them, Myre heard Vrelian voices shouting. Someone had noticed the missing guards. They dropped into the tunnel just as the first explosion tore through the depot. The blast was enormous, much larger than Myre had expected. The Vrelians must have been storing plasma charges in the depot. Their own ammunition was now destroying their supplies. Secondary explosions followed. The ground shook. Dust fell from the tunnel ceiling. Myre and Ji-hoon ran through the darkness, putting distance between themselves and the destruction. When they finally stopped, both of them were breathing hard. Myre could hear chaos above. Vrelian soldiers were shouting, trying to organize a response to the attack. One down, Ji-hoon said, grinning. Now they know they are not safe. Over the next hours, they struck again and again. They destroyed a communication relay, forcing the Vrelians to use less secure frequencies. They sabotaged a water purifier, making the invaders rely on their own limited supplies. They planted false evidence, leading search parties in wrong directions. And slowly, Myre noticed something changing. The Vrelian soldiers were becoming more cautious, more nervous. They jumped at shadows and wasted ammunition shooting at nothing. Fear. The humans were making the Vrelians afraid, but they were not alone in their resistance. As word spread through the town that someone was fighting back, other colonists began to act. Taijin, a young mechanic, used his knowledge of mining equipment to create makeshift weapons. He distributed them to anyone willing to fight. Yoonji, the doctor, had established a hidden medical station in the basement of her clinic. She treated wounded colonists and provided safe shelter for those fleeing. Vrelian patrols. Even ordinary people were resisting in small ways. They gave false information to Vrelian interrogators. They sabotaged equipment when the invaders were not looking. They helped hide people the Vrelians were searching for. Ji-hoon and Myre became symbols of that resistance. The bride and the cowboy. 2 humans who refused to surrender. On the second night of the occupation, they made their boldest move yet. They infiltrated the Vrelian command ship. The ship had landed on the outskirts of town, surrounded by guards and sensor equipment. It should have been impossible to approach. But Ji-hoon had noticed something in his observations. The ship's waste disposal system vented directly outside, and the ducts were large enough for a person to crawl through. This is insane, Myre whispered as they approached the vent under cover of darkness. Completely insane, Ji-hoon agreed. But that is why it will work. They will never expect anyone to be crazy enough to try this. They climbed into the waste duct. The smell was terrible, but Myre forced herself to keep moving. This was too important to let discomfort stop her. Inside the ship, they moved carefully through service corridors. Ji-hoon's military training helped him navigate the layout. Vrelian ships followed standard designs, and he knew where to find what they needed. The data center was in the ship's core. It contained all the information the Vrelians had gathered about the invasion, about human defenses, about everything. But it also contained something else. When Mireille accessed the computer systems, she found files on the precursor artifacts. The Vrelians had been studying these artifacts for years. They knew far more than they had admitted. "Ji-hoon," she said quietly, "you need to see this." He looked over her shoulder at the screen. The data was damning. The Vrelians had found precursor sites across the galaxy. Every time they found artifacts that responded to other species, they destroyed them. They had been systematically erasing evidence of the precursors for centuries, but they could not destroy the artifacts that responded to humans. Those artifacts were too powerful, too resilient. So instead, the Vrelians had tried to hide them, to keep humanity away from their own heritage. "This is bigger than we thought," Ji-hoon said. "This is not just about conquest. This is about preventing humanity from claiming what is rightfully ours." "We need to send this data to the colonial fleet," Mireille said. "Everyone needs to know what the Vrelians have done." She began downloading files to a portable drive. Terabytes of information, all proof of Vrelian crimes against humanity and other species. An alarm suddenly blared through the ship. They had been discovered. "Time to go," Ji-hoon said, drawing his weapon. They ran through the corridors with Vrelian soldiers in pursuit. Ji-hoon fired. The human warships came through the darkness like angels of vengeance. Mireille counted 12 of them, their hulls painted with the blue and white colors of the Colonial Defense Fleet. They were smaller than the Vrelian command ship, but they moved with purpose and precision. Colonial Destroyer Incheon. "This is Ji-hoon Park, broadcasting from Dust Haven." Ji-hoon spoke into his emergency transmitter. "We are under occupation by Vrelian forces. We have critical intelligence data. Request immediate assistance." The response came quickly. "Ji-hoon Park, this is Captain Soman aboard the Incheon. We received your distress signal. Hold your position. We are engaging the enemy." In orbit above New Mesa, the battle began. Mireille watched through a commandeered Vrelian viewing device as human ships danced around the larger Vrelian vessels. The colonial fleet used hit-and-run tactics, never staying in one place long enough for the Vrelians to target them effectively. But on the ground, the situation was still dangerous. The Vrelian commander had left behind a substantial occupation force. Hundreds of soldiers were still in Dust Haven, and they were becoming desperate. "We need to get this data to the fleet," Mireille said, holding up the portable drive. "But we cannot transmit it from here. The Vrelians will intercept and jam any signal." "The old mining facility," Ji-hoon said. 3 kilometers outside town. It has a powerful transmitter array. The miners used it to send ore analysis data to orbital processing stations. Can we reach it? If we move now, while the Vrelians are distracted by the fleet. Ji-hoon checked his weapons. It is going to be dangerous. Mireille looked at the data drive in her hand. Everything they had risked their lives for was stored in this small device. Proof of Vrelian crimes. Evidence of humanity's connection to the precursors. Information that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. "Then we better move." "Fast," she said. They gathered what supplies they could. Carrion slipped out of town using the maintenance tunnels one last time. Behind them, they could hear fighting as the remaining colonists engaged the Vrelian occupation forces. Taijian and his improvised militia were making the invaders pay for every meter of ground. The desert at night was cold and dark. The 2 moons of New Mesa provided just enough light to see by. Mireille and Ji-hoon ran across the sand, putting distance between themselves and the town. They had covered almost a kilometer when they heard pursuit. Vrelian soldiers on hoverbikes. Their sensors had detected movement leaving the town. "Keep running!" Ji-hoon shouted. "I will slow them down." He turned and fired at the approaching bikes. His shots were accurate, hitting power cells and steering mechanisms. 2 bikes crashed, their riders thrown across the sand. But there were more coming. Myray saw a rocky outcrop ahead. "There!" she shouted. They ran for cover as plasma bolts scorched the ground around them. Behind the rocks, they had a moment to breathe. "We cannot outrun them," Myray said. "No," Ji-hoon agreed. "But we can outsmart them." He pulled out their remaining explosives. They had 3 charges left. He placed them carefully among the rocks, setting up a trap. "When I give the signal, run for the mining facility," he said. "Do not look back. Do not wait for me. Just run. I am not leaving you." "You have to," Ji-hoon said firmly. "That data is more important than either of us. If you do not get it to the fleet, everything we have done means nothing." Before Myray could argue, the Vrelian bikes arrived. The soldiers dismounted and began to advance on their position. "Now!" Ji-hoon shouted. Myray ran. Behind her, she heard gunfire and explosions. She wanted to look back, to see if Ji-hoon was following, but she forced herself to keep running. He was right. The data was more important. She ran across the desert, her legs burning with effort. The mining facility appeared ahead, its metal structures dark against the sky. She was almost there. Then something hit her from behind. A Vrelian soldier had caught up to her. The impact knocked her to the ground, and the data drive flew from her hand. Myray rolled and fired her pistol blindly. She was not a trained fighter, but fear and desperation made her dangerous. One shot hit the Vrelian shoulder, cracking its armor. The creature clicked in pain and raised its weapon. A shot rang out, and the Vrelian fell dead. Ji-hoon emerged from the darkness, bleeding from several wounds, but still moving. "I told you to keep running," he said. "I am glad you do not follow your own advice," Myray replied. They retrieved the data drive and limped toward the mining facility. The main entrance was locked, but Ji-hoon shot out the controls and they forced the doors open. Inside, the facility was dark and abandoned. The miners had evacuated when the invasion began, but the equipment was still functional. Myray found the transmitter array and began powering it up. "This is going to take a few minutes," she said. "The system needs to boot up and align with the orbital satellites." "We do not have a few minutes," Ji-hoon said, looking out the window. More Vrelian soldiers were approaching. A lot more. He began barricading the entrance, using mining equipment and metal panels to create defensive positions. Myray worked frantically to get the transmitter online. The Vrelians reached the facility and began their assault. Plasma bolts melted through the walls. Ji-hoon returned fire, his shooting calm and measured. He made every shot count. How much longer? He called out. 2 minutes, Myray replied. Maybe less. A Vrelian soldier broke through a window. Ji-hoon shot it, but another came through behind it. Then another. They were overwhelming the defenses through sheer numbers. Myray grabbed her pistol and started shooting too. She was terrified, her hands shaking, but she kept firing. She thought about her grandmother, about her research, about all the humans who would benefit from the truth she was about to reveal. "Upload is ready," she shouted. "Connecting now." She inserted the data drive and began the transmission. The information flowed out, beaming up to the satellites and then to the colonial fleet. Terabytes of data. All the secrets the Vrelians had tried to hide on the colonial destroyer Inchin. Captain Soman watched her screens in shock as the data arrived. She saw the evidence of Vrelian crimes. She saw the information about the precursor artifacts. She saw everything. "Broadcast this on all frequencies," she ordered. "Human, Vrelian, and neutral channels. Everyone needs to see this." The data spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every human colony received it. Every news network picked it up. And most importantly, the Vrelian fleet received it too. The Vrelian commander in orbit above New Mesa watched the transmission with growing horror. His species' greatest secret was now public knowledge. The Empire's claim to supremacy had been shattered by a human scientist and a cowboy in a mining facility. Myray and Jihoon were running out of ammunition. The Vrelians were going to breach their position any moment. "Transmission complete," Myray said. "We did it." "Good," Jihoon said, firing his last shots. "Now we just need to survive the next few minutes." Then the facility shook with a massive impact. Myray thought it was a Vrelian bomb, but Jihoon was laughing. "That is not them," he said. "That is us." She looked out the window and saw a drop pod slamming into the desert around the facility. Human Marines emerged, their powered armor gleaming in the moonlight. The colonial fleet had sent reinforcements. The Marines hit the Vrelian forces like a hammer. After days of fighting guerrilla resistance, the invaders were unprepared for a direct assault by professional soldiers. The battle was short and brutal. When it was over, a Marine captain entered the facility and found Myray and Jihoon sitting against a wall, exhausted and wounded, but alive. "Dr. Myray Choi?" the captain asked. "Yes," Myray replied. "Ma'am, on behalf of the Colonial Defense Fleet, thank you. The data you transmitted has changed everything. The Vrelian fleet is retreating. They know they cannot win this now." Myray looked at Jihoon. They had done it. 2 people against an invasion force, and they had 1 in orbit. The Vrelian ships were indeed retreating. But Captain Soman had other priorities. She opened the channel to all human colonies. "This is Captain Soman of the colonial destroyer Incheon. We have evidence that humanity has a direct connection to the precursor civilization. The Vrelians have been suppressing this information for centuries. They attacked New Mesa to prevent this truth from being revealed. But they failed. Because of the courage of 2 people, Dr. Myra Choi and Jihoon Park, the truth is now known to all." She paused, then continued. "The Vrelian Empire has built its power on lies. They claim to be the inheritors of the galaxy, but the real inheritors are standing right here. We are human, and we will not be silenced. We will not be conquered. We will claim our rightful place among the stars." Across human space, billions of people heard those words, and they cheered. On New Mesa, Myray and Jihoon were evacuated to the Incheon for medical treatment. As they lifted off from the planet's surface, Myray looked down at Dust Haven. The town was damaged but not destroyed. The colonists had survived. They had resisted. They had won. "What happens now?" she asked Jihoon. He smiled. "Now we find more of those artifacts. We learn what they can teach us. And we show the galaxy what humans are really capable of." Myray nodded. The fight was not over. It was just beginning. But for the first time since the invasion started, she felt hope. The bride and the cowboy had saved their town. Now they we. 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Dust Haven. Myray stood in the rebuilt saloon, looking at the memorial wall. Names were carved into the wood. 47 colonists had died during the Vrelian occupation. Each name represented a person who had resisted, who had fought for their freedom. The town was recovering slowly. Buildings were being repaired. New colonists were arriving every day, drawn by the story of the resistance. Dust Haven had become a symbol across human space, a reminder that humans could not be conquered. Myray touched one name on the wall. Haijin Lee. She had been a teacher who hid children in her school basement during the invasion. The Vrelians had found them and executed her. But the children had survived because of her courage. "It never gets easier," Jihoon said, standing beside her. His wounds had healed, but he still moved carefully. The doctor said he would carry scars for the rest of his life. No, Myray agreed. It should not get easier. We should remember what was lost. They walked outside into the bright desert sun. The town square had been cleared of debris and rebuilt. In the center stood a new monument, a simple pillar of stone with words carved into it. Here stood humanity. Here we did not break. Across the square, workers were finishing the reconstruction of the general store. Taijin supervised the work, his mechanical skills proving as valuable in peacetime as they had been during the resistance. He waved when he saw Myray and Ji-hoon. "The new transmitter is ready," he called out. "Tested it this morning. Stronger signal than the old one." "Good," Myray called back. "We will need it." She and Ji-hoon continued walking, leaving the town behind. They headed toward the Crimson Canyons, where Murray's research had begun, where she had found the artifacts that changed everything. The canyon walls glowed red in the sunlight, ancient stone carved by wind and time, and hidden within them, technology millions of years old. Myray led Ji-hoon to the site of her original discovery. The precursor artifacts were still there, embedded in the canyon wall. But now they were surrounded by research equipment. The Colonial Science Institute had established a permanent facility here. Dr. Yoonji was already at the site, running scans. She had traded her medical practice for Zen archaeology, fascinated by the artifacts and what they represented. "Any progress?" Myray asked. "Some," Yoonji replied. "We have identified 17 distinct symbols in the artifact matrix. They seem to be a form of written language, but also something more. When you touch them in certain sequences, they activate different functions." "What kind of functions?" "Energy generation, data storage, and something we have not figured out yet. A kind of broadcast system. We think it might be for communication across vast distances." Myray approached the artifacts. They looked like metallic crystals growing from the rock. When she placed her hand on them, they glowed with soft blue light. Symbols appeared, floating in the air like holograms. "Only humans can activate them," she said. "We have tested with volunteers from other species. Nothing happens." "The genetic connection," Ji-hoon said. "The precursors made these specifically for humans. Or they made humans specifically to use these." It was still unclear which was true, but the implications were staggering either way. Humanity was not just another species stumbling into space. They were inheritors of an ancient legacy. Mara's communicator beeped. She answered and saw Captain Summon's face on the screen. "Dr. Choi," the captain said, "we have received reports from 3 other colonies. They have found precursor artifacts similar to yours. All of them respond only to human touch." "How many sites total now?" Myray asked. 17 confirmed. "And we are finding more every week. The Vrelians hid them well, but now that we know what to look for, we are uncovering them across human space." This was what Myray had hoped for. The precursors had left more than just a few artifacts. They had left a trail, a legacy specifically designed for humanity to find. "There is more," Captain Soman continued. "The Galactic Council has requested a meeting. They want to discuss humanity's claims regarding the precursor technology." The Galactic Council was a loose alliance of the major spacefaring species. They had mostly ignored humanity before, considering the human colonies too small and insignificant to matter. But the revelation about the precursor connection had changed that calculation. "What do they want?" Myray asked. "To negotiate," Captain Soman said. "Or to threaten. It is hard to tell with politicians. But the Colonial Assembly wants you there. You are the one who discovered the artifacts. Your testimony will carry weight." Myray looked at Ji-hoon. He shrugged. "Your choice," he said. "But you know what I think." She did know. Ji-hoon believed humans should claim their heritage boldly, without apology. He had seen too much of alien aggression to trust diplomatic niceties. "I will go," Myray said to Captain Soman. "When do they want to meet?" "Next month. On the neutral station at Kepler 442. They will give us time to prepare." After the call ended, Myray sat on a rock and looked out at the canyon. Ji-hoon sat beside her. "You do not look happy about this meeting," he observed. "I am a scientist," Myray said, "not a diplomat. I do not know how to talk to the Galactic Council." "Tell them the truth," Ji-hoon said simply. "Tell them what you found. Tell them what the Vrellians did to hide it. Let the evidence speak for itself. The truth does not always win." "No," Ji-hoon admitted, "but it is a good place to start. And if talking does not work, humans have other options. We proved that here." He was right. The Battle of Dust Haven had taught the galaxy an important lesson. Humans might not have the most advanced technology or the largest fleets, but they had something more valuable. They had the will to fight for their freedom, no matter the odds. A sound made them both turn. A hover vehicle was approaching, kicking up dust as it crossed the desert. It stopped near the canyon, and a man stepped out. Dae-ho Shen, Moray's former fiancé. He was wearing prison clothes, his hands bound in magnetic restraints. 2 military police officers accompanied him. "What is he doing here?" Ji-hoon asked, his hand moving to his weapon. "I requested his presence," Myray said. "There is something I need to say to him." Dae-ho approached slowly. He looked older than Myray remembered, thinner, broken. His trial had been swift and public. He had been convicted of treason and collaboration with an enemy power. The sentence was life imprisonment. "Myray," he said. His voice was soft, uncertain. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." "I did not do it for you," Myray replied coldly. "I did it for me. I needed to see you one more time. To understand. Understand what? Why you betrayed us. Why you betrayed me. Was it just money? Power?" Dae-ho was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was bitter. "The Vrellians offered me a place in their empire. A real position of authority. Not just managing a mining colony on a frontier world. They promised me respect." "Respect," Myray repeated. "You sold out your own species for respect from creatures that see us as animals." "I know," Dae-ho said. "I know what I did. I have to live with it every day. But you have to understand, Myray, I am not like you. I am not brave. I am not special. I am just a man who wanted more than this dusty planet could offer." "You could have had everything," Myray said. "You had wealth, position. You were about to marry someone who actually cared about you, before she learned what you really were. But it was not enough. You wanted power over others, instead of partnership with them." Dae-ho flinched. "I know, and I will pay for it. But I wanted you to know, I never wanted anyone to die. I thought if I gave them what they wanted, they would leave peacefully." "That shows how little you understood them," Ji-hoon said. "The Vrellians do not do anything peacefully. They take what they want and destroy what they cannot use." "I know that now," Dae-ho said. He looked at Myray with something like desperation. "Can you ever forgive me?" Myray thought about that question. About the people who had died because of his betrayal. About the terror and pain the invasion had caused. About how close they had come to losing everything. "No," she said finally. "I cannot forgive you. What you did is unforgivable. But I can let go of my anger. I will not carry hatred for you. That would only poison me. You will serve your sentence and live with your choices. That is justice enough." She turned to the military police. "Take him back. We are done here." As they led Dae-ho away, he looked back one last time. "For what it is worth, I am glad you survived. I am glad you won." Myray did not respond. She watched the hover vehicle disappear into the distance, carrying her past away. You okay? Ji-hoon asked. Yes, Myray said. I am better than okay. I am free. They returned to the artifacts. Myray placed her hands on the metallic surface and felt them respond to her touch. The symbols danced before her eyes, telling a story millions of years old. The precursors had been here. They had left these artifacts specifically for humanity to find. They had prepared a path for humans to follow, leading to knowledge and power beyond imagination. But why? That was the question Myray intended to answer. With Yoonji's help, with the resources of the Colonial Institute, with all the determination she possessed. What do you think we will find? Ji-hoon asked. When we follow this path, the precursors left. I do not know, Myray said honestly. But I think it will change everything. For humanity. For the galaxy. For all of us. She looked at Ji-hoon, this strange cowboy soldier who had become her closest friend and partner. Are you ready for that?